Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Can the Treasurer tell Australians by what percentage the cost of food has gone up during Labor's cost of living crisis since the election of the Albanese Labor government?
The call to the Treasurer.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The nerve of these characters asking about the cost of living after they opposed all of our efforts to help Australians with the cost of living. Now, if you'd been there for Australians when we wanted to give them tax cuts, energy bill relief, cheaper early childhood education, cheaper medicines, better wages, help with rent, if you'd been there for Australians then that would warrant you coming up and asking about the cost of living. Now, as the Prime Minister said in response to this question when you last asked it, if you look at the last year of food inflation, it's 3.0%. If you look at the last year under those opposite, it was 5.9%. 5.9%. And so I appreciate the Shadow Treasurer in his usually comically incompetent way asking me to remind the House that food inflation over the last year is almost precisely half of food inflation under those opposite in their last year, Mr Speaker. Now, on this side of the House, our primary focus is the cost of living. That's why we're rolling out that cost of living help. And if you look at the cost of living index that was released the other day, lower growth in living costs across every household type compared to at the time of the election. And so that is another reminder, Mr Speaker, that although inflation is still too high, although Australians are still under too much pressure, we have made some welcome and encouraging progress in the fight against inflation, and we saw that in the numbers last Wednesday. Now, Mr Speaker, there are two things that makes the Shadow Treasurer really angry. First of all, when inflation goes down, as it did on Wednesday, and secondly, when the public finds out the cost of his policies.
Has the Treasurer completed his answer? The Manager on a point of bit.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The point of order's relevance. The Treasurer is not even attempting to answer the question. The question was very tight.
Order. Members on my right, that is not how we roll. The Manager is entitled to raise a point of order just like the Leader of the House is or any member is. So that's just not a free-for-all commentary. He's going to be given the respect of the House, and I want to hear what he has to say.
The question was very tight. The question asked the Treasurer how much food prices are up since the election of the government, not the last 12 months, since the election of the government. And if the Treasurer doesn't know the answer, it's 12%.
Look, that may be a fair point, and you may want to make it, but it's not the time to make those kinds of commentary. So I'd ask the Manager not to abuse the lenience that I show him. The Treasurer was asked a question. He's read figures into the Hansard. You may dispute those figures. He may order, and that's for another time, that you may question those. But whilst he's reading data into the Hansard, answering the question as he sees fit, maybe not how you see fit, he's entitled to do so under the standing orders, and now he is providing information regarding the question he was asked. So just ask the Manager not to add extra comments or any member to their points of order. In light of what I've said before, just ask the Treasurer to remain directly relevant to the question he was asked.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I asked about food inflation and pointing out that food inflation is currently half what it was when we came to office, and that is another reminder that although Australians are still under pressure, the inflation numbers have been substantially lower and now in a sustained way. And so I know they don't like to hear that. I don't think I've ever seen anyone as unhappy as the Shadow Treasurer on the day last week when inflation came down again in the bottom half of the Reserve Bank's target band, Mr Speaker. So if they are unhappy about the levels of inflation right now, as we are, and we're working to get inflation down, then they must be absolutely furious at their own performance in office, Mr Speaker, which delivered inflation multiples of what it is right now. And so this question is another welcome opportunity to remind people that when cost of living help was being provided by this side of the House, those opposite opposed it. That means that Australians would have been thousands of dollars worse off if this opposition leader had his way, and they'll be even worse off if he wins.